nowadays, doing some basic grooming today, making sure that pets have the flea service, handing out food for pets.
We're going to get our dogs vaccinated and chipped.
Ahorita, lo que va a hacer ahorita, le vamos a lavar sus dientes y también cortarse las uñas y vamos a tratar de agarrar comida si todavía hay cuando terminemos.
As we know, the economy has hurt many people, but their pets still got to eat, their pets still got to be healthy.
Because of the pandemic, people can't afford it right now. People are losing their jobs, so money's a little tight budget right now. So why not bring your dogs and cats?
My mother got laid off because she was working as a waitress, and so all the closures, she hasn't been able to work as much, and so this right here will just alleviate us slightly. It'll help our pocketbooks a little bit.
Vaccinations and the chipping, they're just so expensive nowadays. So that being able to do this and give people, the opportunity to get their dogs cleaned and, stuff like that is just great because it's free and it's stuff that a lot of us can't afford.
But what's also important is we're building community, and that hardly happens during a COVID era.
I'm just excited to be here. All the dogs are super cute, and it's nice that they're going to get taken care of.
I just think it's a really good thing that Homeboys is doing. Even though they can't open fully, they're still trying to engage the community. And I think it's a really good thing that they're doing for everybody.
Yeah, pets are part of our family. That's what helped everybody cope through the pandemic, because you've got friends at home, you've got somebody to share with, and if you're alone, pet's the world to you. I mean, this is who you watch, this is who you live with, especially nowadays where we're having a quarantine and we're seeing infection rates spike. Pets are our little people at home. They're part of our families. It's who we live with. It's who we love.
You know what? This is my first time ever having a puppy. So it's very, I think it's very important for my family.
Pets are family.
Yeah, pets are family, and this guy right here definitely needs his nails trimmed, so he'll be happy after this.
Speaking of pet trimming, it's Responsible Pet Owners Month. The Willows, a bridge home, opens for unsheltered Angelinos. And Councilmember Price wants to hear your nomination for the 2021 Shero's Awards. These stories and much more up next on City Beat.
February is Responsible Pet Owners Month. Along with giving your animal love and attention, pets rely on owners to feed them, care for them, and keep them safe. Part of keeping our furry friends safe is by following city and state pet laws that were created to protect you, your pet, and your community. The City of Los Angeles Municipal Code provides information on everything from leash laws to spay and neuter guidelines. Information on keeping your pets in sync with city laws and regulations can be found at laanimalservices.com. In a continued effort to help keep unsheltered people in housing and off the streets, Councilmember Blumenfield has announced the West Valley's first bridge housing site, the Willows. The on-site amenities and resources at this latest interim shelter include case management, space for animals, and larger quarters for couples. The Willows received its name in honor of the Tongva tribe, whose tradition it was to house the needy by constructing shelters from willow trees. Blumenfield is working to open several additional housing and shelter opportunities that are expected to be ready this spring. The Office of Councilmember Price is accepting nominations for the Tribute to Shero's Awards. A Shero is a woman who has demonstrated leadership, pride, and commitment to her community in a remarkable manner. Nominees must either live in or work with an organization or business in Council District 9. She has to have made or be making a difference in the district in response to the COVID-19 public health crisis. Nominations for the 2021 Tribute to Shero's Awards will be accepted through February 19th. For any questions, please contact Nora Gutierrez at nora.gutierrez@lacity.org.
Well, the vaccines have arrived, and Angelinos are slowly but surely receiving the shots. But is it enough? The folks over at LA Medical Services have dropped by to give us an honest assessment of how we are actually doing.
How are you feeling from a medical perspective? How are you looking in terms of the rollout of the vaccine and the lowering of the cases that are positive and the lessening of the tragedy of the deaths towards COVID? Is it looking good from your world?
It's encouraging, and I think Here's the scary part, though. We just need to keep it up. You know, we're not out of the woods yet, so we still need to, don't go out if you don't need to. Wear your mask, stay away from people, wash your hands, and absolutely get vaccinated. You know, we still have a ways to go, but I'm really extremely encouraged, and I'm so excited that we have 2 vaccines, some more on the horizon. You know, there's a couple of more, so I think the more vaccines that are out there, and if you have the opportunity to get a vaccine, for sure.
You know, are there self-check things that we should be doing to make sure that, because it's hard to see yourself. It's hard, I can see, oh, you're not doing well, but how do I know I'm not doing well?
One thing that everyone is suffering from, whether you realize it or not, is burnout. And not because necessarily you're working so hard, which is what we used to think burnout meant, but it could be burnout from being at home with our spouse or our partner or our children, or burnout from being home alone, or burnout from being the one who has to go and face the pandemic day after day. Burnout comes with irritability, you know, trouble sleeping, low energy, withdrawal. All these things might be signs of that, so it's good to keep an eye out and see if our behavior's changed, how we're coping with it, also what we might be drinking to cope with it. That's another thing that has been an increase in alcohol use lately. All these things are good to keep tabs on.
What's the website in which we can reach out?
I think it's corona/virus.la. It's got information about testing, vaccines, statistics in terms of what the city's positivity rates are, and it's very informational.
Okay. Well, thank you both for being such incredibly strong advocates for the right things to do and clarifying information. I really, really appreciate it.
Typically, LA sanitation workers Jonathan Trong and Carlos Aldapa Torres have a pretty straightforward task. As members of the Pollution Assessment Section from the Watershed Protection Division, they collect water samples and calibrate equipment for impending rains. But in late January of this year, they were at the right place at the right time to save a life. Take a look.
My partner Jonathan Trong and I, we were scheduled to go and sampling at the Machado Lake and Wilmington Drain that day. We exited our vehicles, and all of a sudden we heard some screaming, like from somewhere. There was a man in the water struggling to swim. So and then right away we just called 911. Sí, nosotros lo que hicimos fue llamar al 911 inmediatamente cuando vimos a la persona ahogándose, y después mi compañero decidió aventarse al agua para rescatar a la persona que estaba ahogando. Many people who are suffering from homelessness, they just use like any other resources such as the river or any other, you know, water source, so they could just kind of take showers or even like drink the water as well. So this situation is very ongoing, like, you know, for a long time. It's our duty as city workers. We have the duty to, you know, help the city, but also our citizens as well. Everybody in my group is very attached to each other. We help each other. We respect each other. It's like a family for us.
It's African American Heritage Month, and the U.S. Postal Service has unveiled a new honorary stamp. This year's honoree is none other than Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright August Wilson.
The 44th stamp in the Black Heritage Series honors playwright August Wilson. Between 1982 and 2005, Wilson wrote his acclaimed American Century cycle, dramatizing experiences of African Americans during each decade of the 20th century.
He depicted a lot of the emotions, the struggles that was facing the Negro families and the culture.
Fences, perhaps the best known of Wilson's plays, set in the 1950s, the play dramatizes a family's wrenching conflicts over issues of responsibility and opportunity in the wake of bias and broken dreams. The Broadway production received the Pulitzer Prize for Drama and 4 Tony Awards.
The winner is Fences. Author August Wilson, producer Carol George.
2 weeks after he died, the Virginia Theater in New York City was rechristened the August Wilson Theater, becoming the first Broadway theater to be named for an African American. It is our honor to unveil the August Wilson Forever Stamp.
A couple of years ago, it was Dorothy Hyatt, who was president for many years of the National Negro Council. Lena Horne and Marvin Gaye was within the last 5 years. So it really means a lot to us to have the opportunity and the privilege to unveil that Black Heritage Month stamp.
August Wilson is the 44th African American icon to be honored with the U.S. postage stamp. The postage series began in 1978, and the first person to be honored? You guessed it, the woman who may soon be making the leap to the $20 bill, Harriet Tubman. Mike Davis at the Board of Public Works spearheads the African American Heritage Celebration for the city of Los Angeles, now in its 76th year. The Our Authors Study Club has been working with the mayor's office to promote Afrocentric literacy.
We were founded by Bessie D. Wright in 1945, and we've been around, we've been in organizations for 76 years now. One of the things as one of our goals and missions is to support our scholars, to support high school seniors that want to go to a second or fourth year college or university. So we support them, and so we have various events. We have the Scholars Breakfast in July. We also have the great opening ceremony with the City of Los Angeles that has been every mayor since Mayor Fletcher for the last 71 years have honored the partnership, and so it really humbles us that every mayor has worked with us in making sure that we have a Black History Heritage citywide program. But we will be having the Evening with the Authors on the 23rd of this month. And also we will be celebrating our study club events with our national organization, which is the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. So it's going to be a fabulous month of virtual experiences.
In the workplace, even people who consider themselves advocates of underrepresented classes can unconsciously act in a manner that is inequitable. For our featured story this week, Malika Billups with the City of Los Angeles Personnel Department talks to us about implicit bias and the impact it can have on our well-being.
Workplace equity is what we call the experience of having a fair workplace that doesn't treat anyone improperly with respect to their protected categories. And those categories include race, color, ethnicity, gender, sex, gender identity, gender expression, ancestry, age, religion, veteran status, and a host of other statuses that are protected. The goal is to ensure that people are treated appropriately according to their actions, not their identity. There's a lot of research that's been done into the diversity of the City of Los Angeles and the diversity of the city workplace. But diversity in a workplace without inclusion does not reap the benefits that we all understand can come from having a diverse workplace. It's very important that those who are different from us are still included and afforded the opportunity to provide their resources, their knowledge, their experience, and bring their whole selves to work so they don't feel like they have to hide a piece of who they are, who their culture is, what their life experience is when they come to work. Executive Directive 27 came out and mandated that the Personnel Department assist the Mayor's Office in creating an implicit bias training, which is an excellent first step. So we learn about implicit bias for the purpose of understanding what it is and understanding that we all have a responsibility to minimize the negative impacts of our implicit biases. What I want Angelenos to know, and what I want for the city family, as we call it, or the city workforce to understand, is that the work that we're trying to do is not to change who people are. It's also not to criticize them or their beliefs or their background or the values that they've grown up with. What we endeavor to do is create a situation in the city workplace where people can work together and can bring their best selves to work. Who they are is able to show up at work and give their very best. That is the ideal of the city of Los Angeles.
Dive into the Hammer Museum digital archives. Check out the LACMA exhibit Islamic Art Now, or enjoy the 2021 virtual Black History Month Festival. All this and more up next on Virtual Things to Do.
While their in-person exhibition sites are closed, the Hammer Museum invites you to explore their digital archives. Explore collection areas and past exhibitions online through in-depth repositories of images and research materials. Past exhibits include Now Dig This, Art and Black Los Angeles, 1960 to 1980, and Take It or Leave It, Institution, Images, Ideology. You can catch Hammer Museum's digital archive collection by visiting hammer.ucla.edu. The Los Angeles County Museum of Art invites you to check out their unique online collection, Islamic Art Now, Contemporary Art of the Middle East. The exhibit highlights contemporary works by artists from or with roots in the Middle East. These artists draw inspiration from their own cultural traditions using techniques and incorporating imagery and ideas from past eras. Take in a bit of the Middle East by logging into Los Angeles County Museum of Art. To learn more about these exquisite exhibits, visit collections.lacma.org. It's Black History Month, and the LA Public Libraries have joined forces with the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Together, they would like to invite you to attend the marquee event of the 2021 Virtual Black History Month Festival. Tune in for a conversation with Henry Louis Gates and Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham, premiering Saturday, February 20th at 10 a.m. For more information on this and all the online events during the 2021 Virtual Black History Month Festival, visit asalh.org. You still have time to check out the Los Angeles Public Library's online series, Fall for Fine Arts 2, African American Artists. Join LAPL for readings and art activities inspired by African American artists that celebrate African American History Month. On February 19th, the featured artist will be American painter Alma Thomas. This virtual art class is open to all ages but focused on grades K through 5. Don't miss Fall for Fine Arts 2, African American Artists, happening Friday, February 19th. For info on how to get a Zoom link, email durant@lapl.org. And that's a look at some virtual things to do.
That's it for this edition. I'm Natalia Bilbao. And from all of us here at LA This Week, thank you so much for joining us. A reminder that you can catch us online at lacityview.org, and we're also on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. See you next time for more LA This Week.
Welcome to the Los Angeles City Council. Today is Tuesday, February 16th. I'm Nori Martinez, the President of the City Council. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield present.
Bonin.
Bonin present.
Buscaino.
Here.
Cedillo.
Here.
De Leon. Absent. Harris Dawson.
Present.
Koretz.
Here.
Krikorian.
Here.
Lee.
Present.
Martinez.
Present.
O'Farrell.
Present.
Price. Rahman.
Present.
Ridley Thomas.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
13 members present and a quorum, Madam President.
First order of business.
Approval of the minutes of February 10th.
Mr. Bonin moves and Mr. Harris Dawson seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Buscaino moves and Mr. Blumenfield seconds. Next.
Madam President, today is Tuesday and time for the flag salute.
Mr. Krikorian, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir?
Thank you very much, Madam President. If you could all please rise. And facing the flag of our nation and always mindful of the values that it represents, please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, let's run through the agenda.
Madam President, would council like all items to go forth with today?
Without objection, that will be the order. Next.
There is a request from a council member to continue item 1 to March 23.
Without objection, that will be the order. Next.
Items 1 and 2 are items noticed for public hearing. Items 3 through 21 are items for which public hearings have been held. Items 22 through 31 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, without objection, those items are now before us. Members, would you like to call any of these items special?
Madam Chair, item 18, please.
Item 18 for Mr. Cedillo, is that comments or an amendment?
Comments?
Any others? Mr. Bonin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to do 18 for comments. I'll also ask item 17 for a potential amendment, which would be, I can read it in and have it circulated, which would be to ask for additional report backs, including 1, the environmental impacts of housing policy, including how best to promote environmental justice and how best to protect environmentally sensitive habitats in areas threatened by the significant impacts of climate change, including wildfires and flooding. 2, how to prevent the development of a glut of luxury housing and how to require that the bulk of new housing built in affluent areas be primarily workforce or low-income housing. 3, how to prevent gentrification and displacement. 4, required infrastructure capacity and investments to support new housing. And 5, how a ballot measure would impact or be impacted by CEQA and by the ongoing updates to community plans and the citywide housing element.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's all I have today. Thank you.
Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Madam President. Item 7 for comments, please.
Mr. Blumenfield?
Yes, thank you. Item 18, both for comments and for what I hope is a friendly amendment, which I thought we had handled in Plum, but I didn't see reflected here. And it basically just would say something to the effect of nothing in these changes shall preclude the Plum Committee from holding a hearing on a high value project. So it's additive. It doesn't
Doesn't
Yes, I
change the
accept
thrust
that
of
as
it, but it's nothing will preclude the
Yes, I
committee.
accept that as a friendly, sir.
Great, thank you.
Any other items, Mr. Blumenfield?
That's it.
Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to call item 28 special for comments.
Item 28 special for Mr. Koretz for comments. Any other items, Mr. Koretz?
No, that's it. Thank you.
And Ms. Rahman?
I had a question about the amendment that Councilmember Bonin just proposed on item 17, I believe. And I was trying to follow as you read it out, but just wanted to ask whether there was the option to include other ways to create this zoning code update other than a ballot measure in that amendment.
Ms. Rahman, I have an amendment maybe that would address your concern.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
That I was about to read into the record. So, Madam Clerk, I would like to call items 17 through 21 special for comments. And I also like to add a slight amendment for item 17, which instructs a planning and HCID to provide other recommendations on streamlining our zoning code in addition to a potential ballot measure.
I'll second that.
It's been seconded by Mr. O'Farrell. Thank you, Mr. Buscaino. The amending motion, Madam Clerk, will be circulated shortly.
Thank you.
Members, are there any other specials? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, which items can we go ahead and vote on now?
At this time, council may vote on items 3 through 6 and 8 through 16.
Okay, go ahead and call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo. Council.
Aye.
Thank you. De Leon. Absent. Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price. Absent.
Aye.
Thank you. Price was aye. Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
14 ayes, these items are adopted.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and move on to public comment.
Thank you, Madam President. And as indicated on the agenda, members of the public wishing to offer public comment should call 669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-535-8466 and press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak. Finally, when you hear the last 4 digits of your phone number, press star 6. And again, call 669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-535-8466 and press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak. And finally, when you hear the last 4 digits of your phone number, press star 6.
So, to members of the public calling in, when it's your turn to speak, please state which of the agenda items you'd like to speak on. You have 1 minute to speak per item, up to 3 minutes total, and if you wish, 1 minute for general public comment. Please speak on the agenda items before moving on to general public comment. We'll tell you when your time's up. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you are not speaking on topic, or if we can't tell whether you're speaking on an agenda item, you'll get one brief warning from me or the president. If you do not immediately get clearly on topic or again straight off topic, the president will cut you off and you'll forfeit the rest of your speaking time, and we'll move on to the next speaker. We'll take 30 minutes total public comment. The items open for public comment are items 2, because item 1 was continued, And items 17 and 18 and 22 through 31. Finally, to repeat, that's 2, 17, 18, 22 through 31. Finally, for members of the public calling in to speak, as soon as you hear someone address you, you're live in the council meeting. If you're also listening to the council meeting on your computer, channel 35, or other device, please turn down the volume on those devices immediately. Also, if you're listening on another device, please do keep one ear on the phone, though, because as soon as we read off the last 4 digits of your telephone number or other identifying information, if you're calling in with a block number, we would ask that you press *6 immediately to unmute yourself. If you're not listening on the phone, because of the time delay, we may think that you're no longer on the line and move on to the next speaker. Thank you, Madam President. We're ready to start up with public comment.
Let's go ahead and take the first speaker.
Call-in user 1, please press *6. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Yeah, my name is Damon. I'd like to speak on all items and general public comment, please.
Okay, so you have 3 minutes for items 2, 17, 18, 22 through 31, followed by a minute for general public comment. Please begin.
Okay, I'd like to start on item 8 with the oversized parking ban. I would like one of the people on this council to finally grow a spine and stand up against...
Speaker, we actually already voted on item 8. That one's not open. Again, the items open for public comment are 2, 17, 18, 22 through 31.
Jesus. All right, so 11's not, I can't speak on 11 either?
No, you can speak on anything, any of them you want during general public comment, but in 3 minutes for the items, you need to stick to the ones that are still open.
Okay, can I speak on 19?
The answer is no, except in general public comment.
Great job, Falvo. You're really killing it. Okay, I'll go on to general public comment since you guys want to limit all public comment. I'd love to see you guys take a stand on these overnight parking bans. They're violence and they need to be prohibited citywide. One of you city council members needs to stand up to the other city council members who keep putting these forward. Item 11, we've all seen the grotesque George Floyd meme that was passed around by LAPD, but you people keep acting like it's a normal police department when they've killed more people than any other police department in the nation, and yet you've raised their funding by nearly 50% since Garcetti has been mayor. Defund the police. Number 19, yes, we need more protocols for council members meeting with developers. We still have John Lee on this council who got caught by the FBI taking bribes red-handed. So yeah, let's get him off the plum committee, Nuri. And also, lastly, FEMA funds for housing. That went through by the Biden administration. So what are you people doing? Use those funds, seize the hotels, get people into rooms.
Next
Show
speaker.
some urgency.
Caller with a phone number ending in 5137, please press *6. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Good morning, City Council. This is Jamie Penn, the socialist who's in the Subdistrict 3 representative seat for Wilshire Center, Koreatown. I'm actually giving a community impact statement report on 17, and then I'd like to offer general public comment.
So you have 5 minutes for the community impact statement on 17, as long as you don't become repetitive. And then when that's done, we'll move on to general public comment for a minute.
Thank you so much. Although your repetitive comment was unnecessary, Fable. So my pronouns are she, her, and for 17, while we support the spirit of the motion, we believe that it sets a dangerous precedent by not providing funding or a specific mechanism to mitigate the decades of neglect for the community plan. Community plans continue to be the most substantive mechanism for community input on land use and planning. And to meet the needs of the city and protect our community, we, the Wilshire Center Koreatown Neighborhood Council, believe that funding for updating community plans be allocated to update all community plans with precedence given to communities who should not have shouldered the bulk of all of the recent developments, as well as those who have yet to contribute to alleviating the affordable housing crisis. We believe that any changes to the current zoning or the specific plan before updating community plans hinders the city's effort to create affordable housing and improve the quality of life of its residents. And then I'd like to give a general public comment.
Yes, please begin.
Pass the FEMA motion now, house people today, and my own personal challenge is to explore social housing options that will actually fix the housing crisis. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Caller with the phone number ending in 3318, please press star 6. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Hi, yes, this is Richie Stajenko. I just want to do general public comment, please.
Can we just hold the speaker? The fire alarm is going off in council chambers. Let me just make sure. Speaker, hold on for just a second.
Okay. Defund the police.
Testing.
The alarms are going off because they knew I was going to give a fire comment, you know?
Okay, sorry about that, members. They're testing the fire alarm in the building. Go ahead, sir. What items would you like to speak on?
Just general public comment, please.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just calling in to wonder what's going on with the motion that was set forth last year to shift traffic strategies away from LAPD. I'm sure we all saw the George Floyd meme shared by LAPD. That's who they are. Defund the police. Move that motion forward. There's no time to waste. We need to pass the FEMA motion now. It's disappointing to see that it's not on the agenda for this week. We need to house people today. FEMA will reimburse. Please move forward quickly on this. I yield my time. Fuck you, Bobble.
Next speaker.
Caller with the phone number ending in 7009, please press star 6. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Hello, this is Bonnie. I'd like to give general public comment.
You have a minute. Go ahead, please.
Hello. So I'm a manager at the Omni Hotel in downtown, and I just want to give a big thank you to Council President Martinez for bravely choosing not to agendize the Project Green Key motion. Taking care of homeless people sure is sort of important, but if we're to allow these folks into our rooms, the damage to our brand would be just awful, awful. So I just want to say again, big thank you to Nuri for standing with us hotel operators over these silly demands of these whiny activists and the needs of the homeless people. I'll close with our motto. Hotel lives matter, back for rooms. Nuri puts developers first, and that's why we stand with her. Also, Nuri, we just initiated the transfer of funds, so it should hit your account soon.
Thank you, Speaker.
Caller with the phone number ending in 7543, please press star 6. Caller with the phone number ending in 7543, please press star 6.
Hi.
Please state your name
Hi,
and the
good
item
morning.
you'd like to speak on.
Hi, good morning. I'm from City 6, Sun Valley, California. I'd like to make a general public comment, please.
Sure, you have 1 minute. Please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Fable. I'm calling to urge the City Council to accept Mr. Biden's offer of the FEMA's administration to use eminent domain to, I guess, acquire certain properties in the city of LA for the purposes of social housing for the low-income individuals and the unhoused. And secondly, I would like for more employment opportunities in the San Fernando Valley. It seems to me that all the good jobs tend to be in LA and whatnot, so we need more jobs and businesses to move into the San Fernando Valley because we also pay rent, we also pay taxes, as I'm a taxpayer myself, and I feel like as a Valley resident, I feel neglected by other by the city, or maybe because the city of LA people get more attention or they complain more or something. But yes, I urge the City Council to utilize FEMA reimbursement.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Pablo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Caller with a phone number ending in 0441, please press star 6. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Hi, this is Rabia Hassan with Esperanza Community Housing, calling in support of item 17 and general comment. Thank you, Council President Martinez, for these motions, and also Councilmember Harris-Johnson for also introducing item 17. Achieving equitable development and environmental justice requires that we center those who've been most impacted by the historical systemic inequities that still drive today's land use and development decisions. Because wealthy and white communities have long denied dense housing, it's resulted in much of the new high-end development pressure being in communities of color. This means that Black and Brown communities have only seen increasing health disparities. But you have the power to stop this, and this motion, item 17, begins a critical reckoning with this history of racial injustice, starting the important conversation of how to build off the success of the TOC program, a campaign led by ACT-LA, and also learn from its implementation and improve upon it. We want to see the city direct zoning reform to historically exclusionary areas as we work to meet our RENA goals. And we also urge you to take advantage of the current housing element process to reach the important outcomes envisioned from this motion, which may also make a ballot measure unnecessary. For general comment, in our pilot acquisition rehab program with the County of LA, it's become clear that many tenants are at risk of displacement due to COVID. Acquisition rehab is a key strategy to stabilize tenants and prevent displacement during and after this pandemic. And one of the motions today, item 21, which we support, paves the way for the city to explore housing finance solutions to this end. And thank you again, Council President Martinez, for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Caller with a phone number ending in 1006, please press star 6. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Yeah, Rob Kwan. I'd like to speak on items 17, 18, and general public comment.
Sure. So you have 2 minutes, followed by 1 minute for general public comment.
Yeah, for item 17, of course, I would love to see this city finally get its shit together and update its zoning code. But I would love to see a whole lot more stuff done by right, but like, let's do a reality check on how this council has approached this issue. Measure S happened like 4 years ago. And it's just kind of silly to see us still dilly-dallying with this thing. I really hope that you actually think these things through and ensure there is an extensive process where you can figure this stuff out. Because if you look at, how TOCs have panned out, we've seen projects pop up where it's clear that really wasn't our intent. Stuff that's happened in Marquis Harris-Dawson's district, where we realized we actually need to have a little bit more there when it comes to process. It's not that easy, and I think that we need to make sure we actually get it right, and this council is not really good at that. For item 18, I wonder what the intent is here, to speed up development, to avoid corruption, It's not clear by the policy solution. It seemed as though we wanted to avoid concentrating power in a few hands, but instead of having, multiple key players, now we just have the council president with a whole lot of discretion. Councilmember Harris Dawson at the Rules Committee spoke up about the need to ensure that we, have a process, that this isn't a way of simply fast tracking things and incentivizing having more expensive projects. But I don't see how we ensure that by simply having deadlines unless we have multiple spaced out hearings. We had a project come up recently where being right up against the deadline was used to just rubber stamp something instead of doubling down and figuring out what you wanted to do as a council.
You can go into general if you wish.
I want to just continue briefly because, the amendment from Councilmember Blumenfield seems to undercut the entire intent. Are these plum meetings just for a hearing to make amendments? It seems to really just kind of swallow the whole intent of creating this policy. For general public comment, commandeer the motherfucking hotels. Again, commandeer the St. Vincent Hospital, commandeer the Olympia Medical Center. There's nothing preventing you from turning that to congregate housing. Project Room Key motion is not scheduled this week. Councilmember Martinez, again, just dilly-dallying with this. Dr. King spoke about the fierce urgency of now, and our council president acts with the fierce urgency of maybe later. I yield my time. Fuck you.
Next speaker.
Caller with a phone number ending in 7719, please press *6. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Yes, it's Eric Previn, and I'd like to speak on the agenda items, 17, 18, a few others perhaps, and then the general public comment.
You have 3 minutes for the items, followed by 1 minute for general public comment. Please begin.
Yeah, I'll try to go a little even faster if you try not to interrupt me. So that would be a good deal. First of all, thanks to Cedillo for putting together the civil rights group. I mean, I think this is really a nice idea to fund yet another clumsy agency that's going to peek in its own navel and play politics. But maybe we could think about complying with the actual state laws around here, as opposed to making ordinances and little tricks to kind of limit the public scrutiny. The reason why I think is because people really do value hearing from other members of the public. They learn about the agenda. They learn what the public convenience or necessity means and why public officials agree, with Target to put more booze on the street, that's a good thing for the public. But other things that we know are important, like that people can find a place to remain housed and clean and use facilities. Like we can't even get in our metros public facilities to go to the bathroom, which is a very strange detail for a city. I think everybody would agree. And no disrespect to Council President Martinez, but
what item are you on, Mr. Previn?
Yeah. Well, I was talking about items 17 and 18 and the civil rights item that Cedillo has on there. I think it's 29 or 30. Anyway, let's move on to the one about not to general, but to the item about hiring a private law firm to assist us in the fight against ghost guns, which is a great area where I think we can all team up and agree we want to get guns off the street wherever possible. We want to kind of minimize gun violence wherever possible. And in connection with that, I would ask that Mr. O'Farrell set up a little plan where he collects from all the office holders who voted for that idiotic ordinance written up by the city attorney with a straight face, David Michelson, cheek to cheek, smiling as he knew he was writing an illegal law for people in the city of LA who want to do business with the city of LA to have to disclose stuff about whether they're in the ACLU or the NRA or these different organizations.
I don't think you're on an agenda item, so let's get back on
the
agenda.
No, that's the item where we're hiring a pro bono firm to help us with ghost guns.
Yeah, that's a different topic, Mr. Previn.
Mr. Previn, move on to general public comment, sir.
I disagree with you about that. I'll go to item 18, if you don't mind, because I don't want to exhaust this time, because I know that there's an opportunity for the public to speak, and you make it so hard by canceling Friday meetings. The plum thing, okay? We went to a plum meeting recently to discuss some of the changes, including making the fees for non-applicants, that means regular residents, not people rolling to do development projects, were doubling. Okay, so that was a big red flag. And when we tried to talk about it, Mr. Harris Dawson was confused and felt that even though it was a special meeting, he could deny comments because the items were being continued by him, along with his little avok. But the reality is that special meetings have to take the comments. So now we are faced with a very unpleasant set of circumstances where we have to bring these matters directly to Judge Nieto in Department 24 and hold the city in contempt. Can you imagine what a waste of time that is? The city should comply with these rules. We're very, very exhausted by that.
So you can go into general if you wish, Mr. Previn.
Well, I would like to talk about Recycle LA, which is in general, yes. Recycle LA for the BOS. Now, BOS means two things, Bureau of Sanitation, but it also means Board of Supervisors. Now, in CD10, we have a new seated member named Mr. Ridley Thomas, who has come from the county where he held court for many years. And now we see a revolving door of these characters, and we're concerned because he's bringing with him some of the great ideas that they put in place at the county, like the job order contracting, where it's not his name on it, but you can see him giddily being excited because there are all these companies that are familiar with that particular scam, which is not all bad, for the record. Mr. Ridley Thomas is a well-seasoned public servant, and he has some good ideas mixed in there with the not-so-good ideas. But I want to make sure that that when Mr. Ridley Thomas comes to LA, he understands that you don't interrupt speakers and pontificate about your particular
Thank you, Mr.
brand
Previn.
of integrity.
Next speaker.
Caller with a phone number ending in 0381, please press star 6. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Good morning. This is Laura Raymond, item 17 in general comment.
Sure, you have a minute for each. Please begin.
Good morning, council members. My name is Laura Raymond. I'm the director of ACT LA, and I'm calling in this morning to support item 17. ACT LA, we're a coalition of 41 community organizations working to uplift communities of color and low-income communities as LA transforms into a more sustainable region. We want to thank Council President Martinez for introducing item 17. We really see item 17 as a critical start to a long overdue conversation about equity and zoning. The same communities that were redlined and disinvested are now ground zero for intense gentrification and displacement. And time and again, land use policies with purported regional benefit have made low-income communities of color into collateral damage. Meeting our state-mandated housing numbers through this RHNA and current housing element cycle cannot once again come at the expense of communities of color. This council action can start the process of addressing historically exclusionary communities in a way that provides affordable housing options near transit in these areas of opportunity. ACT LA submitted a detailed set of recommendations to the council file for this motion, and we hope you will consider them. Notably, we hope this action can take advantage of the current housing element update that is underway, which may make a ballot initiative unnecessary. For general comment, I'd like to express ACT LA's strong support for item 21 to expand acquisition and rehabilitation of at-risk housing. As you know, low-income communities and communities of color face the most severe economic impacts of the pandemic, and we need to take bold action to protect vulnerable residents from being evicted from their homes and displaced from their communities during and after this emergency. As a member of Healthy LA, we've been working with other organizations on real housing solutions to the current economic crisis, and we see this as an important step to stop evictions. However, this is also a long-term solution. Empowering the Housing Authority to expand their acquisition programs, a great opportunity to grow our public housing stock and strengthen our social housing and community land trust infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you,
Next
Speaker.
Speaker.
Caller with the phone number ending in 1470, please press star 6. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Good morning. My name is Maria Patiño Gutierrez. I'm with Strategic Actions for a Just Economy, and we're members of the Alliance for Community Transit. We want to thank Council President Martinez and Councilmember Harris Dawson for introducing item 17, and I'm calling in support of this motion. As the callers before me have shared, a long history of inequitable planning has had a dire consequence for low-income communities and communities of color in LA. Exclusionary, wealthy, and white communities have long denied dense housing, leading to much of the new high-end development pressure being in communities of color. We believe this motion begins a critical reckoning with this history. We want to see the City of LA direct zoning reform to historically exclusionary areas as we work to meet our RENA goals. This motion starts the important conversation of how to build off of the success of the TOC program and also to learn from its implementation and improve upon it. So once again, we thank you for that. And then I do have public comment on item 21, which we want to speak on.
Please go ahead.
And we want to thank also Council President Martinez for advancing this motion. And we think it's important to empower the Housing Authority to expand their acquisition program, to grow our public housing stock, and strengthen our social housing infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Next speaker.
Caller with the phone number ending in 1474, please press star 6. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Good morning, Michael Shillstone with Central City Association. I'd like to speak on items 17, 18, and 19, please.
So you have 2 minutes for the items, followed by 1 minute for general public comment. Please begin.
Thank you. We support the intent of these three motions and the goal of reducing subjectivity and political influence in the land use approval process, creating certainty and expeditiously delivering much needed housing. Updating the city's outdated community plans is fundamental to moving away from project by project approvals, but this takes substantial time and resources. The Council President's proposed ballot initiative offers the opportunity to consider how we can reduce discretionary review and produce housing in the short term, building off of programs like TOC and density bonus. We believe there are a host of policies that could also alternatively be accomplished legislatively, like amending site plan review and eliminating Q conditions and P zones, among many other recommendations we laid out in our letter to the Plum Committee. We thank Council President Martinez for her leadership on this important issue, and CCA is a ready partner on solutions that foster transparency, consistency, and trust in our city's leaders. Thank you.
Next
Thank
speaker.
you, sir.
Caller with the phone number ending in 1677, please press star 6. Caller with the phone number ending in 1677, please press star 6. Caller with the phone number ending in 1677, please press star 6. Caller with the phone number ending in 7708. Please state
Hello.
your name and the
Hi.
item you'd like to speak on.
Hi, my name is
Pat. Go ahead. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Hi, my name is David Levitas, Executive Director of LA Forward. I'd like to speak on item 17 and general public comment.
You have a minute for each. Begin.
Thank you. So my name is David Levitas. I'm Executive Director of LA Forward with approximately 10,000 members across LA City, particularly a strong base among middle-class communities. I want to speak in support of item 17 and thank Council President Martinez and Councilmember Harris Dawson for introducing item 17. We know that there's been a long history of really inequitable planning that's had dire consequences for low-income communities and communities of color here in LA. And exclusionary communities that are particularly affluent and white have long denied dense housing in their own backyards, and that's led to really the concentration of high-end development pressure in communities of color, the same areas that have been disinvested from now being kind of hyper-gentrified. So this motion is really important for reckoning with this history, and really would love to see the city direct zoning reform so that we are meeting our RENA goals for housing production, channel that into historically exclusionary areas. As an organization, as a member of ACT LA, we've focused on these issues for a long time, and we're really looking forward to moving away from a site-by-site model and doing zoning reform across the board, and learning from what's worked in the TOC program that we fought for and improving upon it. And we also urge the City Council to take advantage of the current housing element process to reach the important outcomes that item 17 envisions, which hopefully will make a ballot measure unnecessary, and really looking forward to working with you all on this critical area of work over the next few months. So moving on to public comment, I just want to reiterate in this moment where this tremendous suffering happened, particularly among the communities who can least afford it, that we're focused on not just immediate relief, but on recovery and avoiding a 2008-like scenario where those who lose the most continue to lose land and the ability to live in the city. And we think it's going to be really important for the city to do everything possible right now to set us up for an equitable recovery that goes beyond, not just builds back where we were, but builds back to a much better place. And we think that the key to doing that is supporting community land for us, supporting public housing, supporting measures that allow community and tenants to purchase properties that they live in or live near. And last but not least, make sure that we get as many folks who are unhoused off the street into hotels, taking advantage of the 100% FEMA reimbursement that the federal government is now offering. Thank you for your consideration of all these measures, and look forward to working with you in the coming months and years.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And that concludes public comment for today's agenda. Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and vote on the following items. Let's vote on item number 2, item 22 through 27, and items 29 through 31. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon. Absent. Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
14 ayes, these items are adopted.
Let's move on to item number 7, called special by Mr. O'Farrell for comments.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, item 7 is in relation to the Recicla program as it relates to a rate increase. The COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting economic devastation, as we all know, has completely altered the landscape from which we legislate and govern at every level of government. This council has taken significant action and comprehensive action to protect people who have lost work, to protect renters, small businesses, and historically marginalized communities as a result of the pandemic and its economic fallout. Additional actions are pending as transitioning into the post-pandemic era will take time. We've all had to make difficult decisions and sacrifice in dealing with this pandemic. And on January 1st of last month, contractual Recicla LA rate increase went into effect. At our last Energy, Climate Change, Environmental Justice, and River Committee, we heard from LA Sanitation and all of the Recicla LA contractual waste haulers about their approaches to meet the needs of our struggling businesses and some multifamily building owners to provide solid resources and recycling collection services during this time. So we are striving to create an interim solution until the pandemic is over, which is essential and is why we instructed sanitation to work with the haulers and report back on a short-term plan and ask the city attorney's office to explore the feasibility of rethinking that rate increase that went into effect last month and until this pandemic is over, and what emergency protections may be included within the existing contract that we adopted some years ago. So colleagues, with this sense of urgency because of this increase and these conversations that are taking place, I ask for your aye vote. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell. Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam President. I share Mr. O'Farrell's concerns, but I'm also concerned that this could result in a proposal to delay our requirement to recycle organics, and that causes a major amount of methane gas and would greatly contribute to ongoing climate change were we to change that. So I'm open to trying to find a way to reduce the costs, but I would like to at least give encouragement that we don't do that by dialing back on critical environmental steps that this program takes.
Mr. O'Farrell?
I appreciate that, Mr. Koretz. And as a staunch environmentalist myself, as you may remember, that was not part of the conversation, nor do I want it to become part of the conversation, and sanitation knows that. So I look forward to the report on what actions and menu of options we have to choose from as they report back. So I appreciate your comments, and that is of course important to me as well. But we have several mom and pop property owners who aren't able to pay their mortgages right now because they're not receiving any rent in some cases. I have constituents where people own duplexes or even quadplexes where they're getting a fraction of their rent and not meeting their mortgage responsibilities. So that will result in their own loss of through bankruptcy. So these are real issues, and in small businesses, of course. So it's a very real world pandemic issue. We just have to come up with solutions so that we can keep tenants housed and some of the smaller rental units from going into foreclosure, which would not be good for anyone, a landlord or the tenant. So with this urgency that we're hoping that we can get the negotiations between the waste haulers and sanitation, and a voluntary agreement would be the very best option. So we're exploring that as well.
Mr. Cedillo?
Let me express my concurrence on the sense of urgency and the need to respond appropriately. Our failure to act can have an adverse impact on small businesses. In many instances, small businesses run by people of color, restaurants, etc., and also the smaller landlords. I think the numbers are incredible of those who our city is housed by people with 8 units or less. Extraordinary numbers. African Americans have a organized entity that is mostly of units of 8 units or less. And so to then come forth with an agreement that was made in a separate time period is to ignore the realities of this pandemic, global as it is. We need a Los Angeles response to this that acknowledges the fact that we will have an adverse impact on landlords, small landlords in particular, who don't have a margin to accommodate these increases. And so what are the causes that would allow us to pause a contract or break a contract? Well, they are simple. It's fraud. Nobody's asserting fraud. Mistake. This is not a mistake. But an act of God is one that's accepted. And the act of God here is this pandemic. It's a global pandemic for which Los Angeles must tailor its own responses to protect all the citizens of this city. And that includes both the tenants, who will need a place to stay, and the landlords who need to make sure that they can maintain and keep up and provide the services for those tenants. And so I thank Mr. O'Farrell for bringing this forward and note that we need to acknowledge the pandemic as it exists and its adverse impact on communities of color. Thank you.
Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I didn't want to missed the opportunity to agree with Mr. O'Farrell and his concerns. This is a massive problem in every district in the city. There are people that are clinging to their mortgages and struggling, and we absolutely need to not do this increase. I think the most obvious thing is all of the haulers are charging healthy amounts for their services. This was a major problem when this program first went into effect. I still think their rates are inflated already, and certainly putting through this increase now through the lens of the pandemic and what we know now is just a slap in the face to the residents of Los Angeles. So I think it's a very reasonable idea to ask them to voluntarily give up this increase. And once again, thank Mr. O'Farrell for putting this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and prepare to vote on item number 7. Please call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon. Absent. Harris Dawson. Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Thank you. Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Yes.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
14 ayes, this item is adopted.
Okay, let's move on to item 28, called special by Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, we all know the negative impacts of COVID-19 and its economic fallout have been widespread and particularly prevalent among Black, Latino, Indigenous, and immigrant households. And as we also know, this is a harsh reflection of longstanding inequalities in education, employment, housing, and healthcare that the current crisis has just exacerbated. And according to a recent Census Bureau survey, nearly 24 million adults, or 1 in 6 with children, have reported in the last 7 days that their household either sometimes or often did not get enough to eat. And 80% of those households surveyed said they couldn't afford to buy more food. And Black and Latino adults were more than twice as likely as white adults to report that their families didn't get enough to eat. So last week, Representative Richard Neal, along with senior House Democrats, unveiled a bill to enhance the child tax credit to $3,600 per child for each child under 6 and $3,000 per child for each child 6 to 18, which would be dispersed as monthly payments. This could be a game changer for millions of families who have gotten the short end of the pandemic stick. This is estimated to potentially lift 9.9 million children nearly or completely out of poverty. And we should get behind this bill and show struggling Angelenos that this council stands with them. And so I ask for your aye vote in support of this critical legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and prepare to vote on item 28. Please call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon. Absent. Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
14 ayes, this item is adopted.
Okay, members, we're moving on to items 17 through 21. Item 17, there's two amendments that have been introduced, one by Mr. Bonin, second by Ms. Rodriguez. The second by, one introduced, that I've introduced, second by Mr. O'Farrell. And there's speakers on item 18, Mr. Cedillo. Mr. Cedillo?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I spoke in opposition to this, and I still haven't gotten clarity on why we would do this. The question I always ask, not to be predictable, but the question I frequently ask my staff is, what problem are we trying to solve here? And to argue this proposal, I think, is to argue and to begin the slippery slope towards the elimination of committees, and to suggest that all problems or challenges that are vexing for us, that the committee structure cannot handle, and that it's not efficient or effective, and that therefore we should move from a kind of structured, organized, representative type of government to a town hall meeting, and that all matters of significance or importance should be held within a town hall meeting. I don't think that this serves the city best interest in terms of the purpose and nature of committee work. It's to analyze, to weed out problems, to analyze the problems being suggested and the solutions. It's to do the research and the preparation, and to really go through the rigor of scrutiny, and not just in Plum, but in this instance, it would be housing as well, since they are interrelated. It would be homelessness as well, since it's also interrelated. And I think that serves the best interests of the city. I'm still unclear as to what problem we are trying to solve by trying to parse out a particular issue, in this instance, noted as high value, and parcel that out and then move that into a form of a town hall structure. How would we do the research? How will we do the amendments? When will matters come back? When will they be heard by other committees? I just think ultimately this is a disservice to the city. I have yet to be made aware of what problem this will solve. And so for that, I will continue to vote no with all due respect on this matter. Thank you.
Mr. Bonin?
Thank you, Madam President. Would you like me to speak on 17, 18, or both?
You've only asked to speak on 18, and then you offered an amendment on 17. You want to speak on 17 as well?
Sure, I'll do both.
Yeah, they're all up. We can speak on 17 through 21. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. And thank you for your proposed amendment to item number 17, which sort of broadens the range of possibilities of how we might address the issues with the zoning code and the lack of housing production in Los Angeles and problems with inequity. I totally support that amendment and appreciate it. My amendment, I think, would supplement both the original report and your amendment, asking for a number of different things to be considered in a ballot measure, and frankly, I'd ask that they be considered in any planning reform that we talk about, which is environmental justice intersection with housing policy, particularly how we address other environmental issues, including the impacts of climate change, the impacts of wildfires and flooding. Also very important, I think, is that we look at issues that I've seen a great deal of in my district that have sometimes been exacerbated by planning reform, exacerbated by state legislation and exacerbated by some of the city's planning reforms, which allows for a whole lot more luxury housing at the cost of displacement and gentrification, and without much affordable housing being built at all. I see in my district a lot through a lot of the incentives and the density bonuses. We'll get more housing, but the affordable housing, the workforce housing, the low income housing is too little and is too late and is often a fig leaf on a lot of luxury housing, some of which just stays vacant, and it doesn't address the problem. So I wanted to sort of lay down a marker for me that I want to see the housing that gets built in my part of town and in affluent areas be primarily workforce housing and be primarily low-income housing, because I think we really need to really need to address the affordable housing crisis and the inequity issues. And I want to make sure that whatever we do has teeth in it, and that the kind of change that I've seen in Venice and in Delray and in West LA, where neighborhoods have been displaced and people have been gentrified out of a home for a neighborhood that has been their family's home for generations, doesn't get intensified. And I know that's not the intention of the original motion, but it is often, in my part of town, the unintended consequence of a lot of planning reforms. And so for both the environmental impacts, for the need to mandate affordable housing in all neighborhoods of the city, including affluent ones, to warn for gentrification, and to look at some of the other technical issues, I offered my amendment. And I thank Ms. Rodriguez for seconding. On item 18, I concur with Mr. Cedillo on that one. I'm concerned about actually reducing the level of scrutiny and the level of public comment on high-value projects by moving them out of the committee and directly to council. My feeling as a long-time sort of observer of and participant in City of Los Angeles government, that we have the opportunity that perhaps we should exercise more aggressively to weigh in on any planning item that comes to the full council. And that by taking it out of committee, we actually lose an opportunity for deeper scrutiny and don't add anything. If some of the concern behind it had been, and I suppose this could be part of it, some of the allegations that the former council member from the 14th, Mr. Huizar, was bottling stuff up in committee, then I would propose instead that we maybe look at a change in council rules that mandates that any motion that gets put in gets a hearing in the relevant committee within 90 days, or then automatically comes to council. And that would sort of address that problem. So that's where I am on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. At this point, this item is a report back, so all these recommendations will be incorporated for all of us to discuss. Thank you. Mr. Blumenfield?
Great, thank you. Wanted to talk about 18. I had shared the concerns that Mr. Cedillo had, and we talked about those in committee, and agree with what Mr. Bonnet said in terms of the idea is to get, we want to have more scrutiny, not less scrutiny. But I also understand, I think the problem that was being attempted to being solved, and I think Mr. Bonnet hit on it a little bit, was that the allegations against Mr. Huizar was one of those, was that he was leveraging the schedule to, for favors. That was the allegation. And the idea is on these big value projects, we don't want that to even be an option. So by moving it to the council, you remove that, but then you have this unintended consequence potentially of losing the scrutiny that you get in committee, which is why I offered that friendly amendment that the council president accepted, which is to make it clear that while we are going to hear these items in council, nothing that we are going to do is going to preclude them from being heard in committee, meaning that it doesn't have to go through committee. It's going to go to full council to be vetted. At least this is the way I understand it. But that the committee chair and the committee can say, hey, we are the plum committee. We want to really put our stamp on this. We want to really pull it apart and have a really extensive hearing, that we will still be able to do that. Because I do fear that in the full council, with all the things that are on the agenda, we're not going to have the opportunity to have those deep discussions and extensive hearings. So I was uncomfortable, but the friendly amendment that I put forward, which makes it clear that we're not precluding the Plum Committee and that there's still a role for the Plum Committee should it choose, gives me the comfort to go ahead and support this. Even though it is saying we're going to have this extra level of scrutiny, which is the full council is going to hear it as well, even if the Plum Committee hears it. So with that, I'm comfortable with it, but I wanted to explain why I'm comfortable with it and why this amendment is what gives me that comfort.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Blumenfield. Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam President. I have concerns about 17 and 18. Although Mr. Bonin articulated my concerns about 17 about as well as could be. My concern is that I don't feel there's a housing crisis in LA as much as an affordable housing crisis. And right now, we keep building more luxury units. We keep doing Ellis evictions and putting people that can't afford housing at market rates out on the street, because once they're evicted due to Costa Hawkins, nothing else available is affordable. And we need a push for affordable housing. So I'm not sure that item 17 moves us in that direction, rather than just exacerbating what we're already seeing. On item 18, what I'm not clear on is, and I don't see a clear criteria, is what applies, what is a high value project. I don't see a hint to exactly what that criteria is. A number of neighborhood councils have submitted red flag community impact statements concerning what this could be. The devil would be in the details. Should a project with 10 or 15% affordable be able to skip some public hearings? Or should it be streamlined only for an all affordable project? Or are we talking about large luxury housing projects? That's not clear to me. And I think I'd want to see that clarified before I'd want to see this move forward.
Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you, Madam President. I think my colleagues have addressed most of the points I wanted to raise, but I want to be really blunt on item number 18. I think it's really important that we move forward with this. We have right now a system that in some ways is broken and that allows someone with corrupt intent to take advantage of a broken system to extort corrupt actions in order to expedite or kill very valuable real estate investments. And that's about as blunt as I can put it. And we've seen the ramifications of that. So it's absolutely vital that we change this system so that we don't have a situation where one person can say no to a multi-$100 million project and have that project be dead unless that person is, especially if that person has a corrupt intent. And so I think that item 18 is one of many steps forward that we need to take in order to erase the broken elements of this system that have given rise to the kind of corruption that we've unfortunately seen. So I really think it's an important step that we take. My suggestion as a potential refinement of this, since this is going to be a report back, is that with regard to the Plum Committee only, anything that is referred to the Plum Committee must be heard and reported out within 60 days, or must be heard by the committee within 60 days, and then reported out to the council. And if it's not agendized, if it's not heard, it will then automatically go to the council. Now, there's nothing stopping the council from referring it back to the committee if it wants to have more hearings or something. But what we can't accept is a situation where the chair of one committee can make the decision about projects that have citywide impact and afford the opportunity for corruption that we've seen. So I strongly support this. I think it's an important problem that needs solving. And my suggestion would be that I'm sensitive to the points that Mr. Blumenfield raised. We do want Plum to have that opportunity to vet projects, but we can't have a situation where a committee chair is able to single-handedly block these projects, because it just invites too much of an assumption on the part of the public that power may be used inappropriately.
Thank you, Mr. Krikourian. And it is my intent that the report back include that the Plum Committee act by a certain date, or else this entire council will hear the item. Thank you for your remarks. Ms. Rahman?
Thank you. I wanted to mostly comment on item 17. I appreciate both the amendments offered by Councilmember Bonin and you, Councilmember Martinez. I just wanted to say one other thing, which is I think that in thinking through how you make reforms to our planning system, the housing element process, like the ballot measure process, because of the kind of complications that you have in the house, it's a complicated process. Planning is really complicated here in LA. And the housing element process is hard to understand, it's opaque. And making sure that the reforms that we're making through the housing element process actually lead to the kind of outcomes that this motion is looking for, I think will require us not just to undergo the process, but really to make sure that we're also funding community engagement to make sure people know about these processes and are able to make interventions in these processes that move us towards the goals that we want. Because without that, what happens is that groups, I think in wealthier neighborhoods who are more tapped into these complex processes tend to influence how we shape our planning system overall. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were thinking about that as we moved ahead with this motion. Councilmember Krikourian, to your comments on item 18, I feel like that's a problem that's not limited to the Plum Committee. It feels like it's an issue related to anything before any of the committees, and would be worthwhile discussing on a broader scale for this council. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez?
Ms. Rahman, you took the words right out of my mouth. If we're going to have a conversation about the discretion of committee chairs in holding up the work that should be considered by this council, then you got to talk about it comprehensively. I think the concerns that we want to address here are specific to the abuse of a particular individual that we've now discovered. And I think this doesn't do anything but change the hands of the same system. And so if we're going to get through how we address this comprehensively, let's talk about it, but let's not isolate it to Plum Committee. Let's talk about it for everything, if that's the case. I'm concerned that this doesn't provide any additional opportunity for more intensive oversight that these projects, particularly large-scale projects, would require, and the level of scrutiny that the community is deserving of having when as it relates to these projects. So for those reasons, I'm concerned about not allowing this to have the very deep scrutiny that some of these large-scale projects deserve, and I'm uncomfortable with this proposal for that reason. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Mr. Harris-Dawson? Mr. Harris-Dawson?
Step up. Yeah, did you all miss all of that? It was really eloquent. Unfortunate.
Sorry, missed it. Why don't you repeat it again?
I just want to thank everybody for who's commented on the committee process with regards to large-scale developments. A couple things. I'm eager to get the report back, eager to have a discussion in Plum. I think everybody raises some good points. The only thing I'd offer to this conversation is we should stop and consider for a second that what we have is not a broken process, but a broken person. And broken people find a way around almost any process. And so I just want to put that into the discussion because, you know, we just in the last week had a conversation about a high value project that had the same exact outcome as it had in the Plum Committee with lots of discussion. You know, we have a practice, which I think is in general a good practice, but it rests a lot of power with individuals in, if there's a development in North Hollywood, I'll confess I haven't been to North Hollywood in a while. Haven't talked to anybody who lives in North Hollywood in a while. I'm going to defer to the person that got elected from North Hollywood to be a leader on that issue. And so should we bring that into question? Again, I think it's a rich conversation. I appreciate Council President for bringing the motion forward and for facilitating the discussion. But again, I don't think I think it's a complex problem that does not come with easy answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Lee?
Thank you, Madam President. And I just want to agree with the sentiment of a lot of what my colleagues are saying on both 17 and 18, that we often complain in 17 that the state doesn't understand our neighborhoods or, makes different decisions that affect us down here without considering the knowledge that we as council members have of our individual districts. And number 18, the argument that someone made about this committee, this specific committee, we deal with things in all of our committees that have, things that can affect all of us citywide, very important decisions. And we have a committee process set up to address those issues, to make sure that we have thoughtful discussion on issues, especially on planning related issues. So I agree, I don't know if it's necessarily the system rather than, the possibility of one person. I don't want us to have a knee-jerk reaction because of the actions of one person to then change around a system that I think really gives us the opportunity in that committee process to really dive in and to look deeply and to, like Council Member Harris Dawson said, listen to the community and listen to the council member of that district who knows it best. So I'm just a little wary of this and making sure that as council we don't just react and we really thoughtfully think out what we are doing that could affect us forever and change the process that we've been working on forever. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I just wanted to add on 18, I still have great concern that we'll have giant projects approved with minimal public input because of this. And I'm not sure that that's a good result. I think the best solution I've heard has been from Mr. Krikorian and others that we pick an appropriate and rational amount of time, 60 to 90 days, to move things out of the committee and to require that they be heard by council. I think that almost certainly would eliminate the problem that we're trying to hit, which is how you deal with potential corruption in this arena. Which is almost impossible to eliminate, but I think this would go a long way forward without just rubber stamping major projects that really need the scrutiny and could have a lot of impact on their neighbors. I'd also say, as has been pointed out while we're at this, that not relating to planning and not relating to corruption, but for whatever reason, we have had examples, I've certainly been the victim of one, where we had a committee chair that just decided they wouldn't hear any of my legislation. So I had something like 15 bills that sat and started even submitting some items under other council members' names because that was the only way they could get through. So I think requiring that every motion be heard within a certain period of time in the other committees, perhaps 6 months, would be a real positive that we've tripped over in the attempt to address corruption. I mean, in my committee, we hear things as soon as rationally possible. And I suspect it could be done in every other committee. We have always given the committee chair the power to just hold things. And I'm not sure that that's good policy. So while we're in this process, I'd encourage that, but I would discourage us coming back with a process that allows huge developments to just be largely approved and bypass the process that we have now.
Mr. Gokorian?
Thank you very much, Madam President. First, let me say, Mr. Harris-Dawson, I'm disappointed that you haven't been to North Hollywood lately, and I'd love to invite you to come on by. We'll go and break bread together, and I'll show you around. And when there are projects in North Hollywood, especially major projects of citywide significance, then I certainly invite all of my 14 colleagues to tear that project apart and scrutinize it as much as you'd like, because I'm not going to bring a project before the council that I don't think should bear up to that kind of scrutiny. So while I certainly agree that the council member for a particular district has superior knowledge over those projects and the communities and the community impacts, I don't think we should ever have a system where that deference is so complete that those projects are not subject to review and analysis, particularly when they have citywide impact. But really, that's not the issue that we're talking about at all. What we're talking about is whether or not we want to have a system where a single person can, like Caesar, put thumbs down on a project that could be worth hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, that could create thousands and thousands of jobs because that one person hasn't been satisfied and wants to use that leverage for personal advantage. That's what this is trying to address. And I welcome the discussion that some of my colleagues have raised about, well, maybe it should apply to other committees too. Sure, but those are different sets of issues. The Public Safety Committee doesn't have situations where a single moneyed interest's future depends on whether or not the committee chair schedules a hearing. As far as I know, no other committee other than the Plum Committee has that unique ability to single-handedly cause a very wealthy, moneyed interest to have to accommodate that committee chair. I can't think of other examples offhand, but we can see example after example after example after example going back many years of that exact situation happening under the previous council member for the 14th Council District during the time as Plum Chair. And you're certainly right, Mr. Harris-Dawson, that a person with corrupt intent will find a way. But I certainly think that we shouldn't give extra tools to a person with that corrupt intent to try to do so. And I don't want to take away the authority of the Plum Committee to do its work, because I think all my colleagues have raised important points about the role that committee can and should and does have to scrutinize projects, to, in front of the public, to question projects, to determine whether or not they have adequate affordable housing, whether or not they have met our environmental goals, whether or not they meet the needs of the surrounding communities. All of those sorts of things that are the typical work of the Plum Committee should certainly be encouraged and continue to go forward. But what we should find a way to discourage and prevent, and maybe my idea is not the right way, maybe there are other ways to do it, but we have to eliminate the ability of one person to say thumbs down on a major project and then be able to use that leverage for personal gain. That's my concern. And I think item 18 is a step in the right direction. When we have the reports back, we can have a more robust discussion. But let's be clear-eyed. I think that is a goal that I believe we have to achieve.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. Mr. Ridley Thomas?
Thank you, Madam President. Just a quick question to Mr. Krikorian, with your permission, Madam President. Did I hear him invite the entire body to tear up his project at our very pleasure?
Yes.
You did say that?
Yes.
Let me just offer you an insight that my grandmother offered me. Be careful what you pray for, Mr. Krikorian. Madam President, with your permission, may I address Mr. Koretz?
Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Madam President, when we see for the future any motions being submitted under the name of Marvin Browdy, we will know who in fact it actually is. Thank you very much, Madam President, for this opportunity to be heard.
Mr. Blumenfield?
Thank you. Just wanted to, inspired a little bit by Mr. Krikorian, wanted to add on. I do think it is true that the Plum Committee is unique in that the timing of these projects can be worth millions of dollars. And that's why this added level of scrutiny can make sense. In other committees, I don't know that it's necessarily the same at every committee. We have chairs that can hold things up, but sometimes it makes sense to hold them up. And we do have a process, Rule 45, where you can extricate a project out of committee. And maybe we need to figure out how to make that Rule 45 process a little bit easier so that members who feel like their projects are being held up have a much easier pathway, or anyone, to extricate something from a committee if it's being inappropriately held up. But if I worry a little bit about just sending everything out of every committee after 60 days, because there are some things that just aren't cooked and shouldn't be sent out of committee after 60 days. But I like the idea of having a easier process to extricate something. And again, and I won't repeat what I said earlier about this measure, but as long as we're not cutting out the Plum Committee, extra scrutiny can be welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bonin?
Thanks, Madam President. Just wanted to respond to a couple of the comments about item number 18. I just want to say I share a concern that if we were to do, and I can't remember whose amendment it was, that said, well, it doesn't automatically not go to Plum Committee, but it might go to Plum Committee. That's actually doing the opposite of what we're intending. It's actually putting more concentration and more control in the hands of the Plum Chair, because then they get to sort of mess with whoever may have a project in saying, oh, I might be bringing it into the committee, I might not be bringing it into the committee. The other thing I want to address is I want to debunk a bit the idea of Plum Committee exceptionalism on handling high value projects. First of all, Plum Committee is one of the few committees where many projects have a time limit. We had the CD14 project in council last week, and Mr. Harris Dawson wanted to send it back to committee, and he couldn't because it was a time limited file. And many types of planning issues are time limited. That's not the case with many other committees. And I would suggest that the powerful and moneyed interest of fossil fuels have an interest in making sure we don't act on climate change stuff or on the Stand LA legislation, or that corporate real estate and landlord interests have a stake in whether or not a committee hears something about renter protections, or the police union certainly is a big, powerful, moneyed interest that has a stake in whether or not something gets heard in public safety or in budget and finance committee. So I think whatever we do should really apply to all committees and not just to the land use committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin. Mr. Cedillo? No? Okay, I'd like to say
Madam Chair, let me thank you for the rich and robust conversation. I have incredible respect both for you and for this body in terms of addressing this. I still remain, I look forward to the report back. My position remains pretty much unmoved, but I do want to note with respect to the point Mr. Bonin just made, there is valuable work done in every committee, both high value in terms of resources, but also important with respect to policy. Let me say with respect to high volume or high value, our contracts that we engage in, our IT contracts, our DWP contracts, tree trimming, all these things are valuable. The police garages in the early 2000s wreaked havoc on the Latino community, and they were making millions and millions of dollars towing the vehicles of immigrants, and had a huge influence not just on this city but throughout the southeast cities, and led to corrupt practices and behaviors that we're continuing to see coming out of southeast cities. So it's not simply the. I remember an instance where the body cameras created a ruckus in terms of whether or not the police would wear body cameras and who would get the contract, how we would proceed. So I want to move away from the idea that the concerns we have are simply the concerns simply within Plum, and actually my interest would be, my interest would be that we would look at a broader review of the committee process, seeking more efficiencies, transparency, and civic participation, but with a note to both this conversation existing within a crisis, and then moving forward about how the city becomes simply more effective and responsive to its citizens. And so I hope that we move in that direction after this conversation. I will note, as Mr. MRT did, Dalton Trumbull should no longer be submitting proposals to the committee. I say that tongue in cheek, and I thank you for your consideration, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. And colleagues, today we have a series of motions dealing with our land use system, and I'm very interested in continuing the discussion when we hear back the report back on item 18. The city has been plagued with a series of corruption scandals related to how we deal with the approval of development projects. These incidents have seriously eroded public trust in this body and as a city as a whole. However, the system's not broken. The system has been broken long before these incidents occurred. We have a land use process in Los Angeles that is convoluted, complex, and that has entirely created a cottage industry to be able to help people navigate it. Lobbyists and land use attorneys and consultants make huge sums of money, blocking projects, getting projects approved, and getting benefits that serve their interest. Yet the working class communities don't have the luxury to hire these people to testify at hearings that take place in the middle of the day, because guess what they're doing? They're working. The result is that some of these projects, some of these communities, I should say, enjoy clean air, tree-filled streets, with others becoming the dumping ground of things that other communities simply do not want. And thousands of people sleep on our streets every single night because they just simply cannot afford a roof over their head. So we don't need to reform our system. We need to entirely remake it. The motions that we will be voting on today are the first step in doing so. They will increase transparency by logging communications between outside interests and council offices on development projects. They will also create a higher threshold for allowing developers to diverge from our established regulations. However, most importantly, we will create a more streamlined process for development by reforming our zoning code. This will help us build a desperately needed housing, especially affordable units throughout our city. It would also ensure that new housing is distributed to all areas in our city, especially wealthy neighborhoods that have access to high quality jobs and mass transit, but that have historically blocked housing from being built in their own neighborhoods. While we must build new housing, we also must help existing low-income families. And so today, We will vote on motions to acquire 10,000 units of naturally occurring affordable housing over the next decade and create a permanent source of funding for our renters relief program, which is desperately needed. Doing this is not only our moral imperative, but also it will help us meet the state requirements to zone and be able to create more housing. Many of us, including myself, and I know we've had this conversation and this debate on council, have pushed back on the housing proposals coming out of the state legislature in Sacramento. However, if we don't really like their policies or don't agree with them, we must be able to create our own. To reflect this, I had made a slight motion on one of the, a slight amendment on one of the motions asking to consider how zoning reform can be implemented through our existing programs, such as our housing element update and our regional housing needs assessment, in addition to a potential ballot measure. These land use proposals have the broad backing of a diverse coalition that we've been working with, representatives from communities and neighborhood leaders, businesses, affordable housing advocates, and equity groups throughout our city. We must stop planning as if we were 15 individual cities and create one process and one system for our entire city moving forward. So with that, members, I ask for your aye vote on items 17 through 21. And we're going to begin voting. We're going to go ahead and take up item 17. There's two amendments that were introduced, one by Mr. Bonin, seconded by Ms. Rodriguez. One introduced from me, and it was seconded by Mr. O'Farrell. So why don't we go ahead and vote on item 17 as amended? Go ahead and open the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon. Absent. Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
No.
For clarification, that was a no vote, correct?
Yes, it was a no vote.
Thank you. Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Yes.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
13 ayes and 1 no. This item is adopted as amended.
Okay, let's move on to item 18. This is also was a friendly amendment by Mr. Blumenfield that I accepted. But why don't we go ahead and vote on that as amended as well? Please open the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin, no.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
No.
De Leon. Absent. Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
No.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
No.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
No.
9 ayes and 5 noes. This item is adopted as amended.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to items 19 through 21. Go ahead and call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon. Absent. Harris Dawson.
This is a report back 18, wasn't it?
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Yes.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
14 ayes. These items are adopted.
Okay, Madam Clerk, what's before us?
Madam President, Council has motions for posting and referral. Motions will be posted on the City Clerk's website shortly after the meeting for the public's viewing. To subscribe to receive copies of today's council motions to your email, please visit clerk.lacity.org.
Okay, those items are posted and referred. Members, are there any announcements? Any adjourning motions? Mr. Willie Thomas, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam President. May I call to the attention of the entire body the passing of Apostle Frederick Casey Price, born January 3rd, 1932, in the city of Santa Monica here in the state of California. He died of COVID-19 complications in the city of Torrance on February the 12th. His passing, I think it's fair to say, marks and passing of an era, not only in the city of Los Angeles, but also in the nation. His leadership transformed the religious landscape of Los Angeles, with the Crenshaw Christian Center standing as a testament to his deep faith and vision. And Madam President and colleagues, whether or not you share his views, it has to be asserted he was still deeply earnest and impactful in his efforts to better the community. He and his wife, Dr. Betty Price, were continuously and persistently committed to community improvement and always sought to do so. He served our community through being a teacher, an innovator, a builder, an investor. And I'd like to say our community is in many ways better for his stewardship. In the words of a tradition out of which I come, Madam President and colleagues, tall timber has fallen. May he rest in peace.
Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With Mr. Ridley Thomas's permission, I'd like to be a signer on this amending a motion. It should be noted, Mr. Reverend Fred Casey Price is indeed legendary in our community. The Crenshaw Christian Center is still to this day the largest landowner in Council District 8 of the city of Los Angeles. His broadcasts during the 70s and 80s were among the most popular broadcasts of any on television at the time. I, have been moved by the gift of Reverend Price, traveling all over the world, whether you're in Europe, in Africa, or in the Caribbean, even in Cuba. People find out you're from Los Angeles and they ask you if you've ever been to the Faith Dome or to the Crenshaw Christian Center. It is truly a legendary contribution to television ministry and television work, and the benefit that the faith community can play as a whole throughout the community. And so it is with great sadness and a general sense of mourning in this part of town that I join in the adjourning motion for Reverend Fred Casey Price.
Madam President?
Yes, Mr. Price.
I'd like to join in that motion too, please. As my colleagues have stated, he was legendary and a real legend. In fact, Crenshaw Christian Church was in Inglewood. Some of you may recall, on Crenshaw. That's where he got started before he moved to the Faith Dome. But was known the world over for his compassion, his leadership, scholarship, and being a very gentle man. So he will be missed by us all. And so I look forward to, thank you to join my colleagues in adjourning in his honor.
Members, any other adjourning motions? Seeing none, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.